Thank you so much, Tom, and what a wonderful conversation with our friend Congressman Greg Meeks on the importance of access to capital. You know, as Tom mentioned, our equality of opportunity initiative is about advancing private sector as well as policy solutions to strengthen Black and other minority businesses in the United States. The reality is that these businesses are not just job creators, but they're very important anchors in local communities. And there's great concern that we have today. In a recent survey that we did with MetLife at the U.S. Chamber, we found that some 66% of Black and minority-owned businesses are concerned about permanently closing. There are some 8 million minority firms across America, some 2.6 million Black-owned enterprises. And here's what we do know, even prior to the pandemic, that Black-owned, non-employer businesses are less than half as likely to get financing as white-owned firms. We know that Black entrepreneurs are nearly 3 times more likely to have business growth and profitability negatively impacted by a lack of financial capital. So this conversation I'm looking forward to. We're excited to have a business owner and one of our corporate partners. Please welcome Rochelle Casalt, founder and owner of the Galilee Schools, and Kamati Malingo, Global Head of Prepaid at Visa. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us in this very, very important conversation. As Congressman Greg Meeks said, it's about access to capital, access to capital, access to capital. Rochelle, let's start with you. Tell us just briefly about your business and the challenges that you face regarding accessing lending and capital.
Thanks for having me, Rick. I own a preschool. We started actually 15 years ago with one preschool, my deceased husband and I, and we expanded pretty quickly into 2, realizing ahead of time that there was great demand in the area, and have since expanded to 3 with the plan of going to a 4th one just before the pandemic hit. So our focus has been on early childhood education, STEAM technology introduced as a part of that education, and really preparing our youngsters for school in a strong way.
Well, good. Now, so you and I talked briefly, and you kind of had challenges, but yet success. Share a bit of an insight as you start to grow and expand and seek capital.
Right.
Give us an insight there.
So we actually went to look for capital when we decided to start our first preschool, my deceased husband and I, and we both were educated. We had college educations. We had both worked in corporate for a long time, but we were not granted capital because even though we had a lot of expertise to bring to the table, so we decided to actually use our home equity line of credit. Our business has gone on to be a 15-year strong account. And so from that perspective, there can be questions asked about maybe how it is that banks weren't able to vet that we might be profitable in a very profitable area. But we went on to still be successful. And as a result of that success, we're able to build great partnerships with leading banks and relationships with leading banks that helped us to be able to sustain and grow. And ultimately, when the pandemic hit, it was actually one of those critical factors that became important in being able to get a PPP loan ultimately.
Kamati, you think about Visa, global payments technology company working to enable customers, consumers, banks, governments, digital currency. Companies are stepping up and have been stepping up in amazing ways to help address some of these challenges, particularly those related to small businesses. Tell us a bit about what Visa has been doing specifically, focused on working with and supporting Black and minority entrepreneurs and business owners.
Thanks, Rick, and thanks for this opportunity to join you today. Visa's mission is to connect the world through our network to enable individuals, economies, businesses, and economies to thrive. And so when you think about small businesses, they really actually span all 3 of those categories. While they are businesses by nature, many of them are individuals or sole proprietorships with 1 or 2 employees. And when you add it all up, 30 million small businesses in the US, 60 million employees, I mean, that's a big backbone of the economy. And we see that here in the United States, we see it globally. One of the things that we did is we made a long-term commitment on a global basis and committed $200 million to help and to be focused on helping small businesses through NGOs and also through financing institutions that operate on a nonprofit basis to help small businesses. So that's what we did on a global basis, and this is a long-term commitment. We've also been very focused in the United States on helping individuals, both through our partnership with I Fund Women, which is focused on helping small businesses that are run by women, and then we expanded that in the pandemic, learning and seeing the same research that you've seen, and helping provide $10,000 grants to we initially 10. But then another 25. So really expanding $10,000 grants with mentorship and with coaching to those recipients, so that they can actually get to the next level, but also just get through what we're going through right now.
Timothy, have you seen, or what have you seen from where you sit at Visa? Any perspectives on challenges that minority businesses themselves are facing? For example, one of the things that Congressman Meeks talked about, which we found as a result of the distribution of PPP funding, was a lack of business relationships. What insight or what things have you seen that minority businesses should be thinking about and can help solve themselves along with business and industry?
That's a very important point. When we think about access to capital, it's more than just getting money into your hands. It's also access to information. It's access to networking and coaching. And when it comes to that specific question, there's a lack of access to information that will provide a small business owner, a minority business owner, to what are the tips and tricks. We've hosted panels. We've hosted sessions during National Small Business Week, for example, where our guests have been able to share insights, including things like, how do you open a bank and a banking relationship, not just by making that deposit, but maybe by expanding it and including in that using your personal credit score to open up a small business credit line, just so that you can establish that credit history, so that you do have a deeper relationship when you need more capital. These are tips and tricks. It was even referred to as secrets that don't necessarily get through to all of our Black-owned businesses, our minority-owned businesses, and we're trying to do something to help expand that access and that access to information as well. And it's through the power of a network.
You bet. And Rochelle, you made a great observation earlier, that you make a big distinction between the existence of capital and access to capital. What do you mean by that?
Right. So if those who have had the opportunity to go to MBA school, you would have heard the word barriers to entry, right, into a marketplace. I say there are barriers to access to capital. So capital can exist, and there can be a big pool, a pot of money that's sitting, and then there's actual access to that pool of money that's sitting. So there really is a difference, and we need to be careful when we talk about access to capital. We really should be saying access to existing capital. So capital is sitting there, and people need to access it. There are 5 things that I think have been extremely important during the pandemic and even prior to that, right? One of those is being prepared. So we talked about being able to have your books in order and accounted for. Our relationships, as Kamathi just mentioned, resources, so being able to have cash flow reserves in place, tech exposure, right, which has been a big issue during the pandemic for PPP applications, and then just pivot strategy. And so when I talk about existence of capital, we have to be extremely careful, because there is a lot of capital that exists, but a lot of minority and small business owners don't actually have access to get to it. And that path to get there is even more critical than the fact that the capital is sitting there that they cannot take advantage of.
You referenced, Rochelle, earlier the PPP program. And you know the U.S. Chamber obviously is front and center in advocating for additional funding and support right now, and immediately during the pandemic. What lessons should we have learned from the PPP program and other government programs? I believe you also received 7A, SBA lending, et cetera. But what lessons should we have learned going forward?
It occurs to me that a lot of our small businesses, minority-owned businesses, are also sole proprietorships. And those folks are really subject matter experts. They're not business people, a lot of them. So there really is this gap in helping them understand or build their business acumen that is required to take advantage of these resources, right? So I think there's a huge gap, and we need to really work on the educational component that brings them from subject matter expert, a great cook or chef, right, to being a proper business person who's able to make sure the accounting is in place and all the other things are in place, right? There's also the way we disperse information. Most of our small business owners are not necessarily as tech savvy. They're not getting all of those text messages and those emails. We need to look at community organizations and use them better. Churches, you know, the Chamber of Commerce that are local to the different areas, and provide the expertise that will kind of round out the skill set that a small business owner would have to allow them to be able to take advantage of these, right? So you want to recruit smaller banks into the program. You want to report support structures to help these businesses. And then you want to be able to educate the owners themselves about the entire scope of what is needed to take advantage of these grants. When I am working hard at trying to keep my business open, the last thing I'm able to do is also find all of these things in all these different places. So the path has to be charted better and more local, if you will.
Yeah. You know, Kamati, one of the things that I think is extremely important, and I saw this in my work at the Department of Commerce, was a need for more research and data. The reality is we do know that most Black businesses are sole proprietors, they're small, but we need more data. We need more research. I was intrigued also by your small business hub. I think to Rochelle's point, this is a place I believe where Black businesses, minority businesses can get access to that education, the tools that they need. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right, Rick, and I'm glad you pointed that out. You know, Rochelle made a very good point about the situation for a small business owner, and it is true. While there might be 30 million stories for 30 million small businesses, there are some trends as well. And one of those trends is, you know, a small business owner starts with the passion, they've got that expertise, but then in the process of building this business, they have to be the CFO, they have to be the chief marketing officer, the head of human resources. And then you throw into all of that mix a pandemic, which disrupts the entire business in the first place. And how do you navigate through all of those things and become the expert, including chief technology officer? So you mentioned the small business hub. There's also the street teams, where we've gone out at Visa to help. We have a goal of 200,000 small businesses that we will connect with. But as of right now, we've connected with over 185,000 small businesses to help them with how do they navigate some of the technology in a touchless pandemic environment, things like that, which can help them get their message out. What kind of signage might they need to help inform the consumers? What might they be able to do to let the broader community know that they are open for business? And so you'll find things like what we've done is we tend to work with and on a network basis, because there's no way we can do all of these things ourselves, but yet the need is out there. And how can we leverage a network? The Small Business Hub is a great place for us to allow as many small businesses as possible to get access to the information that we've put together, we've collated to make it more seamless and more, just to simplify that access that Rochelle was talking about.
Thank you. You know, Rochelle, 2020 has been obviously extremely challenging for everybody personally, and certainly the impact on businesses across the country, particularly small and Black minority businesses. You know, some say this is a K-shaped recovery where there are winners at the top and a lot of losers at the bottom. But I'd be curious to know, as a business owner, how are you thinking about 2021 and beyond? I talk a lot about perhaps this is a time to reimagine, to reboot, to rethink, to reset. But what are you thinking about as you think about what we've experienced, what we are experiencing still as a result of the pandemic? But as we get to the other side, how are you thinking about your business?
So it's important to understand that I mentioned those things. If you happen to have business acumen, if you happen to have technology expertise, if you happen to have had cash flow reserves of 6 to 9 months or a year, and you were able to pivot, you still are in a cash flow crisis right now going into 2021. So it becomes extremely important at first to be able to shore up, right, your expenses and be able to be clear and predictable about what your expenses are going to be. So financial management becomes extremely important, and to have predictable financial management. Beyond that, because you can kind of predict now what your revenue is going to look like based on what you've seen over the past 3 or 4 months to 6 months. Now, get that said, then you want to layer on top of that what I would call a pivot strategy. So what else can your services be used for in a virtual way? What else can you augment your services with that would allow you to serve beyond your immediate market? And then start to envision that, because that is usually, if we're going virtual, lower cost to entry, lower barrier to entry, really, than some of the brick and mortar things that we've done in the past. So I feel like you have to do both of those things. And I really think it's important for Congress to be able to act, because most small businesses are truly about to really hit the cash flow crisis January of next year. So that's important in addition to pivoting.
Yeah, Kamante, you obviously sit in a very unique position at Visa. What insights are that you can share from where you sit, what you see that could be useful in terms of industry insights as we think about 2021 and beyond? What knowledge could you share to Black and small-owned businesses?
Oh, look, so we're in the business of, first, to use our network. It's really important to listen, and we are trying to, as many ways as possible, to hear what's happening with the small businesses, to really understand what is going on. And because of our network, we do touch many of these, many both small, medium sized businesses. That gives us a window into what's happening. I think Rochelle is exactly right. This is a time. It's difficult to think of this as time to thrive. Whereas but there's the need to pivot for sure, and there's a need to get through this as well. And so from what we see, it's super important. Something that we haven't talked about yet in terms of access to capital is that one of the cheapest forms of capital is basically the revenue that you can get from your customers. And so how can you support that? I'll tie in listening with that particular aspect. After Hurricane Katrina, one of our small businesses mentioned to one of my colleagues that they were open for business, but they didn't have a way to let people know that they're open for business. And that led to what is now on our website, the Back to Business website, which allows any consumer to see which businesses are open. And while it started through a hurricane, and there are hurricanes in the east and wildfires where I live in the west, now in the pandemic, we're all affected. And having something like that, a resource like that, which allows small businesses to access their customers and let them know that they're open for business, helps as well.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for. And one of the things I think as you think forward, I talk a lot about this is a time to reimagine. I mean, how do we think about joint ventures? How do we think about mergers and acquisitions? And this is a time during this pandemic to really immerse in education with so much knowledge about the the tools and resources that Visa has and other companies to do deep internal education and knowledge. Because I think Rochelle was right that it's one thing to have for capital to exist, is another to access. Oftentimes that bridge could be through education and knowledge. As we sort of start winding down here, I'd be curious to know, as we think about the role that Black and minority businesses play, and I think Congressman Meeks touched on this, and I've preached the sermon 1,000 times, if not more, that they're not just businesses and job creators, but they are true important anchors in the social fabric of local minority communities. And so any additional thoughts on how we can not only address the short-term needs, and these are immediate needs, but how do we think long-term about helping these companies survive and thrive for the long term? Because there's so much important to play such an important role, not just to our economy, but to our social organizational structure. Rochelle?
The best story I can think of for this, I actually just spoke with a girlfriend of mine who opened a restaurant, a Caribbean restaurant in New York City. And I love that she is joint venturing with a lady who happens to be Caucasian, who has not even done anything restaurant related. What that has allowed them to be able to do is expand their ability to get credit, right? It's allowed them to expand the network of who they can go after. And it's allowed them to be able to imagine themselves beyond what she would have probably imagined as her customer base. So I think looking and starting to really understand what minority small businesses out there may be looking for joint venture opportunities and informing them of possible partners in that space could be revolutionary, because what we've learned during this pandemic is while it's okay to be able to operate in our silos, I think a lot of joint ventureship is really going to take us out of this pandemic, in addition to kind of our pivot strategy. So I would urge a lot of small businesses out there to start to think beyond your immediate. That's so critical, and start to look for partnerships where you might not have. And it'd be great to have resources that allows them to be able to do that matching, because I think that could be essential to kind of working together to get through this together. And obviously partnerships with Visa and other companies like them would be awesome.
Good. Kamati, anything to share?
Sure. As I mentioned, small businesses are the backbone of our economy. And, as it relates to what you pointed out in terms of long-term commitment, what Visa has announced is a long-term commitment, a 5-year commitment that we've done and that we are in the process of implementing. But this is a network, right? We are a network, and we believe in the power of networks. It infuses everything we do. And we bring that to bear here. So that means that there's a role for everybody to play. We are going to play a role. We certainly invite the small businesses to partner with us. We thank you, the Chamber of Commerce, for giving us an opportunity to expand the reach of what we're doing and what we're doing. But then in addition, we need the consumers to be intentional. Be very intentional about the way in which you shop and how you spend your dollars. See ways to support small businesses, the local businesses. See how you can shift some of your behavior, some of your shopping behavior, because that pays dividends, and it is something that's sorely needed right now. So I would just add that to it.
Yeah, I think your point is so well taken, and we got to be reminded that Black consumer spending alone in America is over $1 trillion. That is a lot of spending power, which directed obviously to support Black and other minority businesses could be an incredibly important sustainable investment model moving forward. Rochelle, I want to ask you this: as you think about the next generation of minority business owners, this is something that the Chamber that we're working on diligently with historically Black colleges, other corporations and partners to inspire young people. When I was in college, in high school rather than dating myself, the message from my mother and grandmother was go to college and get a good job. And a good job to them was oftentimes a government job. But what we didn't get a lot of was go to college and learn how to be an entrepreneur, to be an innovator. So I'd just be curious about any thoughts that you have or work that you're doing in inspiring. You're already an example, but inspiring this next young generation of Rochelle's.
Thanks. I start at home, and I encourage my sons to be entrepreneurs. I literally encourage them to have a side hustle. and we sit and we have those conversations about what that looks like, and I'm committed to that. Beyond that, I make sure to, in fact, I just recorded a series with another young lady who I mentor around getting to that young generation and helping them understand what the ins and outs of entrepreneurship looks like. I think that systemically or from an institutional perspective, we have to start to talk to our children about what sustainability looks like as an entrepreneur. We were fortunate to lose my husband, unfortunate to lose my husband, I should say, but fortunate that he had helped us set up a business that helped us be able to sustain beyond him. And I want that to be a message that young Black children understand, right? And in order for them to understand that, they need to understand what it looks like and what an entrepreneur looks like. So I think everything from historical Black colleges and education to what happens in the home, but more importantly, to showing them the ins and outs of what an entrepreneur looks like on a day-to-day basis, what decisions need to be made, what calculations need to be made, and what the true results of that look like for the community, for your family, and for the community at large. So we have to be present in this moment, and we have to show them what that looks like, and we have to show them what the results of that look like for the community at large. There's no other way than to show, in my opinion.
You bet. And Kamada, I'm so impressed and intrigued with all of the programs that Visa has, and more specifically thinking about Rochelle and the young women and girls, your She's Next and I Fund Women, Black women, the grants programs in that regard. Thank you for all that you're doing at Visa and more to support existing businesses and also to help inspire this new generation. Any additional thoughts you'd like to add?
Well, I'm doing a lot the same as Rochelle, also instilling in my own family and with my own children. I do have a son who was going to attend college this fall, but had to, because of the pandemic and the distance learning, opted to take a year off. While during that year, he has set up his own small business, and that's been it's been very informative for him from an entrepreneurship perspective. I think that entrepreneurial mindset cannot be taught early enough. I didn't have that opportunity. I'm glad he has that opportunity, even though this overall situation isn't great. There is that opportunity to start something yourself, and so I agree that we need to do more of those things on a one-on-one basis and keep that spirit going to the next generation.
You bet. So listen, let me say thank you, but I gotta ask this final kind of lightning rod around the question, and this is the most difficult question that you will get today.
Oh boy.
And the question is, it's Friday. We all have been dealing with the stress, the challenges of the pandemic and the economy. Give me one thing that as you think about Friday and the weekend that you look forward to, that you look to have fun. Is it a movie? Is it a book? Rochelle, give us something inspirational.
Two things. Basketball starts today, preseason, and football on Sunday. or where I'm at. In between, I'm cooking and spending some great time with my son. So that's plenty. And I look forward to it. I'm a sports person, so. Nice.
Kamasi, what do you say?
I'm just looking forward to spending a little time out and about my house, getting some fresh air and fixing this and that. We spend a lot of time on calls and inside, and so the opportunity and the freedom to get outside during the day and stretch, and even just doing some knickknacks around the house is going to be fun for me.
Well, I'm going to do a little of everything that both of you just said. So I look forward to it. We have to find those small things. They do matter. I want to say thank you so much to both of you for joining us in this very important conversation on accessing capital. You are examples of the thought leadership, living out the dream of expanding equality of opportunity to all people. And we believe that an important part of that is inspiring, strengthening Black and minority-owned businesses in our country so that they can be impactful and not just creating jobs, but leading and being examples for others to follow. So thank you so much for joining us. Hope that you have a great day and great weekend. See you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.